Well, to start, let me tell you that the objective of my paper is to be provocative. So its success will be assessed in terms of critics at the end. This has been said, and without further ado, this paper, let me tell you that this paper starts from a very simple observation: the swift and important success of CSR. If we look in the history of theories, of disciplines, CSR is kind of successful. Why? Because in a few decades, 30 or 40 years or so, became mainstream. And this also in regarding governmental organization and non-governmental organization, business, media, academia, and this outstanding success deserves an explanation, and this is even more outstanding if we take into account the fact that CSR actually is normative. That the consensus, the agreement is about normative terms like goodness, responsibility, right, duty, and so. And if we compare this with the history of philosophy, we will see that this is incredible to achieve such a widespread and large consensus. So it is precisely these ideas that I would like to explain through my paper. That will be my particular objective. That will be the particular objective of this paper. And let me share with you the outline. At the beginning, I will try to explain that this consensus is and the success then of CSR is due to the fact that the object of consensus is kind of soft, and I will explain what do I mean by that. And furthermore, I will better illustrate this through ISO 26000, making the making of ISO 26000, and finally I will conclude by assessing the consequences for the CSR theory and practice. Well, the state of the art of the literature, but especially if we take into account the practitioners of CSR, we have very often the impression that we are on a highway, and we have one direction. This is good. This is the right decision. That one is bad, and we are guided by moral concepts as if we are guided by street signs. If you want to go there, take that direction, and vice versa. Well, this is enforced more recently by a series of general and widespread programs. In the last decade, more especially, we have a tendency towards universalization. This idea that we have, that we need and we should provide a general view about CSR. So a very few initiatives that I mentioned, like a Global Compact or Millennium Development Goals. And what are these general ideas? These universal goals are several of them. I just mentioned I think that a simple review of the literature will converge in this direction, like alleviating poverty is good, not alleviating poverty is bad, and fight climate change and so on. This is good, not fighting climate change is supposed to be bad. Well, I will not discuss this in detail. Just my take on that is the following one. So, of course, that alleviating poverty is good. I mean, who would be against alleviating poverty? So it's like saying, who is against liberty? Who is against justice? Of course, everybody is for liberty, everybody is for justice. Who is against good? Everybody is for good. And the reason we have this consensus, it is also because this consensus is soft. What I mean by soft consensus is that we agree actually on a very general ideas, and of course we will disagree when we start to understand and discuss how to alleviate poverty. When you have discussion about sweatshops and child labor and so on. Well, this is the general theoretical approach, the framework that I have, and then I will make a step further by trying to understand how this consensus and is constituted in CSR. So I have a look. I will. My intention was to have a look at the ISO 26000. So everybody knows. Everybody here, I'm sure about that, knows what is ISO 26000. It is a recent released standard, which it is a specific type of standard because it's not certifiable. So this is not a standard of quality as all the other ISO standards. It is implemented on a voluntary basis, and here behind me, you will see we have a better overview of that. It's the official one of ISO with with 7 clauses, and the core issues and the fundamental practices here. This is the core issues, and why I choose this as a case study for illustrating my theoretical point of view, because this recent work on the ISO 26000 was celebrated as being a success, and also as having the intention of applying to all types of organizations, regardless their location and size, which is very ambitious goal. So how is that possible to apply like normative view on such a large scale? To apply this to all types of organizations and so on. So, in addition, when we look at the working group on ISO, who are those who are working on this, we also notice that we have a lot of participants. Actually, this is, Inasmuch as understood, the largest participation for the ISO standard. And of course, 450 participants at the last plenary meeting, because they were having several, I will tell you in a minute, and that was the participators were continually increasing from one session to another. So we're having participating from member countries at 99 at the end, and liaison organizations were having the status of observers, so they didn't vote on that. And they were selected from 6 types of stakeholders, and recent studies, PhD studies, especially done in Louvain, and recent articles in political sciences are very much interested in how the consensus is formed when various stakeholders' interests are at stake, and this is an important literature on which I ground my own research. Then, as to the standard writing process, well, we have this roughly follows the standards of ISO processes. So we have several steps. Started in 2002 with the New York term proposal, and then it goes further with the working draft, the CD committee, and the draft international standards, and finally the ISO standards. So that at each stage we're having a document. At each stage we have comments on that, and we have replies, and we write a new draft, and at these stages of working document CD and this, we vote for its approval. There are special rules for that, and these are the rules of ISO. So again, as I said, there are research on that. I will not go further in this because this will go beyond the object of my research. But I just presented so to be sure that you know what I'm talking about. Again, as I told you already, the journey was relatively short, actually, when you compare with the amount of work and participants. It started officially in 2002, but concretely in 2005 in Salvador, where was the draft structures, and then successively one every year or twice per year, you had the meetings, and here on the slide you can see the each time how the work in progress advanced. The last step was in Copenhagen in May 2010, and at each time you had comments. And my work, of course, was to read all these comments. So at the end, I was reading about 200 resolutions, because 200 resolutions were emitted, and about 20,000 of comments. And then, in addition, I interview some of the participants, especially those who voted against. Right, that explains my white hair, because it's 1 year of work. I'm interested in the making of ISO because I want to, in as much as I understood, my question was, how do we reach consensus here? So this matches actually exactly the philosophical literature on how to, and the negotiation on how to reach consensus. Well, I will give you only two examples. Many of them can bolster my opinion on this topic. So the first example I will give you to illustrate my point of view is the working draft. So that was the discussion in Santiago. The debate was called at that time picking and choosing. So the discussion was between those who were saying, well, all the core issues of CSR should be addressed by each corporation. There is no such thing as picking and choosing. The other one was saying, yeah, but look, they do not apply systematically to everybody in all the locations, so we should let corporations to choose about that. What was the solution to go further? Because that was the fourth or the fifth, depends how do we count, version of the working draft. So how do we work further? Well, on the first time, the solution says that, of course, all core subjects are relevant for all organization, blah, blah, blah. And then, like brackets, furthermore, we add that, well, after all, it is the individual organization responsibility to identify what is relevant and significant. So this is kind of adversative. So it's a way of going further, but at the same time, it's watering down the very meaning at the beginning. So that is one illustration. The second one, it is actually famous because was completely blocking the negotiation at the last stage in Copenhagen in 2010. We agree practically about everybody. We made sure that most of the countries' representatives will vote for. But one problem was at stake. And that is referring to the non-discrimination debate. What was the issue? So that the issue was that this clauses 6371 and following ones regarding the human rights and the equal opportunity. So basically, everybody agree on the fact that corporations should fight non-discrimination. And the thing comes right now, and they say on grounds of, and then you say like race, sex, and common things. While some people will also put it sexual orientation. So non-discrimination on terms of sexual orientation. And then you had a lot of representatives of countries, especially Middle East countries, but generally the cultures influenced by the Muslim culture, saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. Not only that this is illegal in some of the countries, that is not to discriminate on sexual orientation grounds, but this is also against some principles and cultures and religions and so on. And there was no way to go further. And how, after all, what is the conclusion, what is the final text saying? Well, the final draft, which was released and approved, replaced sexual orientation with personal relationship. So everybody was happy. Yeah, but again, I'm submitting this to you also. This is not meaning the same thing, right? So the meaning is watered down. So we reach a consensus. In my eyes, this consensus is soft. So since I'm going fast, and I will take some time to explain the consequences of this for the CSR. Well, to be sure, let me specify that when I'm saying soft consensus, like I'm saying like good or bad consensus, it's just a fact. It is a soft consensus. That is, the meaning is less committing than it was previously, because it is so. It is just as a descriptive fact. Well, again, when I assess the consequences of soft consensus for CSR, I'm not referring to some bad consequences that the soft consensus will provoke. I'm only saying that if we match soft consensus with the consequences in the limits, let's say, of CSR that are emphasized by several authors and these are commonly accepted in the CSR literature, we can see some correlation. Let me better explain you. So in theory, in CSR theory, we often note that we have a form of monism, that unlike moral philosophy, where you have various points of view, various moral points of view, in CSR, we do not have this. Well, my take on this is that one of the explanations is also the focus on soft consensus and of universalization of CSR that inevitably supports and bolsters this monism. It goes the same in terms of methodology, also in terms of isolation. It is also interesting and curious to see how little has been done in CSR literature to build bridges with adjacent disciplines like moral philosophy, but also normative economics and business ethics, just to mention the closest ones. Of course, things are done, but comparing to the whole literature, this is kind of limited in my eyes. And one of explanation that I provide again is soft consensus. As to the practice, one of the most things that is currently criticized and put it and highlighted is cultural mimicry, as the fact that the Occidental values were also applied to non-Occidental cultures, and this may create some discrepancies. And again, one of these explanation is also due to the soft consensus on these general values growth in the Occidental cultures. And finally, probably in the most common critiques of CSR is window dressing, the fact that corporations are interpreting CSR in terms of communications and public relation and not in terms of genuine commitments. Well, why is it so? My explanation on that is that it's precisely because of the general soft consensus that it is very easy for a corporation to apply CSR commitments, because I mean, who is against alleviating poverty? Everybody is in favor of alleviating poverty. This explains why so many corporations, after all, adhere to Global Compact. And this explains also the debate and the critics in terms of blue washing, because I'm mentioning Global Compact, or of greenwashing if I have to speak about environment. Well, at the same time, as I said, this is a very easy way. This creates an easy path for application, and at the same time accounts for the success, for the swift success of CSR. It is a Charybdis Sheila of CSR, this soft consensus. So I reached the end of my presentation, and the conclusion that I will draw, it is again not a normative one, but a descriptive one. This is to say that a way of sidestepping the previously mentioned and acknowledged limits of research and practice in CSR, we should switch the balance. Instead of soft consensus, which in my view it is currently the tendency, especially if we look to this universal perspective, universalization of CSR, so we should switch this towards the genuine disagreement. So that will be the tendency. And more focus on moral dilemmas, more focus on entrepreneurial ethics, more bridges with adjacent disciplines, I think will only revigorating the research and the practice in CSR, and will discard this critic saying that CSR is a fashion. So that was my presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attention, and I wait for your critiques and questions. So, thank you.